The observation deck of station offered an unobstructed view of the binary system below. Kevin pressed his palm against the transparent aluminum viewport, watching the twin stars perform their eternal dance. The larger star, designated Kepler 442a, burned with a steady amber glow, while its smaller companion traced elliptical patterns through the void. "You're starring again," Elsa said, not looking up from her workstation. Her fingers moved across the holographic interface, adjusting the parameters of tonight's spectral analysis. "Just thinking," Kevin replied. He was a xenobiologist, assigned to the station 3 years ago to study the peculiar electromagnetic signatures emanating from the planetary system. Elsa was the astrophysicist, brilliant and methodical, who had been here 2 years longer. They'd become friends out of necessity. Station had a crew of exactly 2 humans. Thinking about food again, Elsa's lips curved into a slight smile. "They'll be here soon." They were the dragons. Or rather, that's what Kevin had started calling them 6 months ago when the juvenile creatures first appeared at the station's airlock. The name wasn't entirely inaccurate. Each entity measured roughly 4 meters in length, with bodies that seemed to shift between states of matter, sometimes solid, sometimes plasma, sometimes something that defied conventional physics entirely. They moved through the vacuum of space as effortlessly as fish through water, leaving trails of ionized particles in their wake. The first encounter had terrified them both. Station alarms had shrieked as unknown life forms approached, their biosignatures unlike anything in the xenobiological databases. But the creatures had simply hovered outside the viewports, their multifaceted eyes, hundreds of them, scattered across crystalline carapaces, watching with what seemed like curiosity rather than hostility. It was Kevin who'd had the wild idea to offer them something. He'd opened the small airlock, the one used for deploying collection drones, and placed a sample of the station's protein synthesis inside. The creatures had devoured it instantly, their forms pulsing with bioluminescence that Elsa's instruments registered as gratitude across multiple wavelengths. Now every night cycle they returned, always exactly 3 of them, always hungry. "Analyzing the latest data from Probe 17, Elsa said, her expression growing serious. "Kevin, the energy readings from Kepler 442a are getting stranger." He moved to her station, studying the cascade of numbers. The star's chromosphere had been exhibiting unusual behavior for months, massive coronal loops that formed geometric patterns, temperature variations that seemed almost intentional. "Natural stellar phenomena," Kevin muttered, though he didn't sound convinced. That's what the review board concluded. "The review board is 97 light-years away and working with data that's 97 years old by the time they see it," Elsa countered. "We're here now, and I'm telling you, these patterns aren't natural." A soft chime interrupted them. The dragons had arrived. Kevin headed to the small galley, where he'd been preparing their nightly meal. Over months of experimentation, he discovered that the creatures thrived on a specific combination of synthesized amino acids, metallic compounds, and strangely, pure information encoded in quantum states. He developed a sort of recipe: protein matrices embedded with mathematical sequences, trace elements from the station's recycling systems, and data crystals containing everything from classical literature to complex physics equations. He sometimes joked that he was running the universe's most exclusive restaurant, with a clientele of exactly 3 interdimensional entities. The dragons waited patiently outside the airlock. Through the reinforced window, Kevin could see them undulating in the void, their forms shifting through colors that had no names in human language. They'd grown since those first visits, or perhaps they'd simply become more solid, more present in this dimension. He cycled the airlock and deposited the 3 containers he'd prepared. The dragons descended on them immediately, absorbing the contents through a process that was part feeding, part data transfer, part something that made Kievan's instruments report errors. As they fed, Elsa joined him at the window. "I've been thinking about your hypothesis," she said quietly. "The one you put in your last report to the Xenobiology Council." Kievan nodded. His hypothesis, that these creatures weren't native to this dimension, but rather visitors from a reality where the laws of physics operated differently. Their ability to exist in hard vacuum, to consume both matter and information, to seemingly violate thermodynamics, it all suggested an origin beyond conventional space-time. "I think you're right," Elsa continued, "but I think there's more to it. Look at this." She pulled up a holographic display, showing the feeding patterns of the dragons overlaid with the electromagnetic anomalies from. The correlation was undeniable. Every time the creatures fed, the star's unusual activity intensified. Vast arcs of plasma would form, creating patterns that mirrored, almost exactly, the quantum signatures of the information Kievan had been feeding them. "They're connected to the star," Kievan breathed. "Not just connected. Watch this." Elsa accelerated the time-lapse. Over weeks of data, a pattern emerged. The dragon's visits corresponded precisely with specific stellar configurations, and the data they consumed wasn't random. When Elsa analyzed it, she found that the creatures preferentially absorbed information about stellar physics, quantum mechanics, and dimensional theory. "They're learning," Kievan said, "but why and from whom?" The answer came 3 nights later. The dragons arrived as usual, but this time they weren't alone. Behind them, emerging from a point in space that instruments registered as a temporary Einstein-Rosen bridge, came something vast. It didn't so much exist as it was implied, a presence that bent light and warped spacetime simply by being nearby. Station alarms screamed. Elsa's instruments went haywire, registering energy outputs that rivaled the star itself. The entity approached Kepler 442a, and the star responded. The amber sphere began to pulse, its photosphere reorganizing into impossible geometries. Elsa's screen filled with data, translations streaming in from the station's AI, attempting to make sense of what it was witnessing. "It's communication," Elsa whispered, her voice trembling. "The star, it's not a star, or rather it is, but it's also occupied." The translation algorithms were crude, converting multidimensional quantum states into something approximating human language, but the message was clear enough. "Young ones, you have been learning well. The small ones here have been kind." The dragons, the juveniles, spun and danced around the station, their bioluminescence flickering in patterns that read as joy. "I am Piraxis, stellar sovereign of the Andromeda Coalition. This star is my vessel, my home, myself. I have been teaching my children the ways of different realities, different physics. They must learn all forms of matter, all states of being, to one day claim their own stellar thrones." Kievan and Elsa stood frozen, their minds struggling to process the magnitude of what they were witnessing. An intelligence that lived inside a star, a civilization that used stellar bodies as vehicles, as habitats, as themselves. "You have shown kindness to children not your own," the message continued. "You have fed them matter and knowledge without knowing their lineage. This is noted. This is appreciated." The massive presence began to withdraw, reality knitting itself back together in its wake. But before it vanished entirely, one final message came through. "The Council of Stars has been watching your species, small ones. You are young, barely aware of the universe beyond your narrow perception, but you have shown potential, compassion for the unknown, curiosity without conquest. These are rare traits. Continue your kindness. When my children are grown and claim their own sons, they will remember the humans who fed them without fear. They will remember Kievan, who cooked without knowing he served royalty. They will remember Elsa, who sought truth in the starlight. Your species will need allies in the ages to come. You have made 3 this night." Then the presence was gone, vanished back through its bridge across space. The star returned to normal, or what passed for normal, now that they knew what it truly was. The young dragons lingered for a moment, their forms pulsing with colors that the translation software interpreted as gratitude, affection, and promise. Then they too departed, diving back toward the star that was their mother, their teacher, their sovereign. Kevin and Elsa stood in silence for a long time. "We've been feeding baby star gods," Kevin finally said. "I've been making snacks for the children of a stellar empress." "Apparently," Elsa replied, then started laughing, a slightly hysterical sound that Kevin couldn't help but join. When their laughter subsided, Elsa pulled up a new set of calculations. "You realize what this means, right? Stellar intelligence, beings that exist across dimensions, a council of stars. Everything we thought we knew about the universe just became obsolete." "The report to Earth," Kevin began, "will arrive in 97 years, telling them about events that happened 97 years ago," Elsa finished. "By the time they know, it'll be ancient history." "So what do we do?" Elsa looked out at Kepler 442a, seeing it with new eyes. Not just a star, but a being, a mother, a sovereign. "We keep observing, we keep learning, and when those kids come back tomorrow night." "I'll keep feeding them," Kevin said, "but maybe I'll add some extra nutrients. Growing stellar deities probably need their calcium." Elsa smiled. "And I'll keep studying the star, with respect, with wonder, the way you should when you're in the presence of something far older and greater than yourself." That night, as they prepared their reports and analyzed their data, both of them felt the weight of cosmic insignificance and cosmic possibility in equal measure. They were two humans on a small station, orbiting a being that could probably extinguish their sun with a thought. But they were also the two humans who'd been kind to her children without knowing it mattered. In the grand scale of the universe, perhaps kindness always mattered. The next evening, when the young dragons returned for their meal, Kevin had prepared something special. The usual nutrients, but also encoded within the data crystals. Human stories of mothers and children, of learning and growing, of kindness between strangers. As the dragons fed, Kepler 442a pulsed once, a single, warm wave of amber light that washed over the station like a benediction. Elsa's instruments registered it as simple stellar activity. But both humans knew better. It was a thank you, from one parent to another kind of family. And in the vast darkness of space, that connection mattered more than they could possibly know. End